Hello and welcome to Ghoulish. I am Max Booth, a host, and today on the program, I am talking about conspiracies with David Osborne, author of Black Gum, and by the time we leave here, we'll be friends. David Osborne is also the founder of the indie crime publishing company Broken River Books. On today's episode, he stopped by to have a lengthy chat about conspiracies, conspiracy theories, why we believe in conspiracies, why they're so easy to fall into, and why sometimes maybe there's a grain of truth to these conspiracies. It's a fascinating conversation. I hope you listen to it. I hope you take something away from it. David Osborne is an intelligent person. He's entertaining. He's funny. And I think this is a great episode. Also, a little neat thing that's going on right now is Osborne and I, we did a bit of what the kids call nowadays a swap cast. Meaning, I had him on my show, which again is called Ghoulish, with me, Max Booth, the host. And Osborne had me on his own podcast, which is called The JDO Show. The THE JDO JDO Show. SHOW. He had me on for a lengthy conversation as well about things I no longer remember. We talked on his show about growing up in a hotel. We talked about racism. We talked about a bunch of other things. It was a few weeks ago. I'm not going to summarize all conversation to you now. You can just go listen to it. Go on over to thejdoshow.podbean.com. And my episode on his podcast should be live around the same time this episode of Ghoulish goes live. That's what we call a swapcast, baby. It's when you take two podcasts and you swap them. You see what I mean? See what I'm talking about? A good old-fashioned swapcast. All right, that's enough of me talking seductively into a microphone. Oh, and one last thing you need to know before listening to this episode with JDO is when we first got on the Skype call, he immediately had to go wash his hands because evidently he destroyed a fly just as he answered my phone call. So, yeah, that's the context you need for the beginning of this conversation, all right? Now it's time to listen to my conversation with JDO about conspiracies. Fuck. Going back to the fly, though, like, did you feel like an absolute badass?
Kind of, actually. It was a big fat horsefly, and it landed on my computer screen in the dark, so the light, I'd have to assume, somehow stunned it enough for me to kill it, but I was already running late because I was finishing up Princess Mononoke with my wife, and I was like, okay, we got to start this. I can't have a fly buzzing around in my office while I'm trying to do a podcast, so I just Mr. Miyagi'd it. I just killed that motherfucker.
Some people say, he wouldn't even hold a fly, not you.
Oh, I'd hurt much more than a fly.
Yeah, what else?
I'd probably hurt Most people on Twitter, just for using Twitter, just to get them back for all the mental anguish that they've caused me. I don't know, man. What's the answer that most writers will like? Donald Trump? I'd hurt Donald Trump.
Oh, got him. You got him.
I would kill the Cheeto Man. That's what I would do. Just kidding, Secret Service. I wouldn't do that.
I don't know if I would kill anyone. I don't know if I would fight anyone. I'm a wuss.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question, actually. Like, would you actually be able to kill somebody? Because I often do see people online say things, like punch Nazis, and I often wonder how many of them are actually capable of doing that. So, for example, when somebody like Gabino Iglesias says it, like that dude's huge. He's built like a luchador, And when he says that he's gonna punch a Nazi, I don't know how much speed Gabino has, but if he gets a hold of a Nazi, he's definitely doing like an orangutan with a phone book, like kind of tearing them in half.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people, I'm like, come on, you're gonna punch a Nazi, really?
Whenever I see that guy, he always gives me a hug, and it's always quite painful.
he means well, but it's often painful, which is very similar to reading his Twitter account.
He's not listening to this. It's okay.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You can call me if you. I published your books, dude. You know I love you. Come on. I'm just having fun.
When I asked you to come on this show, you quickly suggested talking about conspiracies. You got some type of conspiracy obsession going on?
Well, I mean, yeah, kind of. But I also, it kind of came into my head because Rob Hart called me because he's researching his new book, and he said it has a lot to do with conspiracies, and I figured you're the guy to call. And I thought, have I become that guy? I didn't even realize that I had become that guy. I think because of the way that I sort of present online or talk about current events, I guess I didn't realize that I was outing myself as a conspiracy dude. But yeah, I'm definitely there.
I think most of us are like a conspiracy guy in some way, right?
Now that I think about it, yeah. Because you have on, I don't know how these things split up so politically. It's also strange for me, but people on the right have QAnon now, which, are you familiar with QAnon?
Only vaguely, because I refuse to Google what it means. But you can tell me.
You're probably pretty smart for it. And I follow some people on Twitter who are really smart and have done a lot of journalistic research into cults and stuff. So they highly recommend not talking about cults, which is what QAnon is. So I'll keep it pretty vague, but QAnon, as far as I understand, sprung out of Pizzagate. Remember that little fiasco?
Yeah, wasn't that like underneath this Papa John's there was a bunch of kids getting fucked and some guy came and shot someone? Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, and basically if you follow everything that they put into it, there's kind of a reason for all of that. I don't know how valid that reason is. I'm kind of like you. That's one conspiracy that I sort of refuse to look at. But so basically, the Pizzagate people were largely concerned with pedophiles and the fact that there are very rich and powerful people who fuck kids and get away with it. The reason why QAnon, which sort of sprung out of that, became so huge, I think, is because of Jeffrey Epstein. When Jeffrey Epstein got arrested and then subsequently, quote unquote, killed himself in jail, which I think even a non-conspiracy theory person was kind of like, it's dicey.
Yeah.
So whenever that happened, I think that gave the fuel to these people where they're like, well, if this thing is true, if this aspect of our worldview, our belief system is true, then what else is true? So QAnon started on, I don't think it was a 4chan thing, but we'll just say 4chan because that's the kind of, stand-in for the dark internet. But the channers, as it were getting messages from a person who would label himself as Q, and and there have been many theories as to who Q is, who is giving them sort of messages about how Donald Trump was sort of single-handedly dismantling what they call the deep state, which is a conglomeration of, corporate interests, the CIA, and just rich pedophiles to sort of continue their fuckery, right? And Donald Trump was in there to shake that up. So in QAnon world, Donald Trump is sort of the savior of all of this. He's the hero. And like I said, that's probably as far as I'll go, because it gets really weird. There's basically Q would send these kind of coded messages to people, and then the way that the human brain works is that they would then reverse engineer things that were happening in real life to fit the conspiracy.
My God, I can think of like how my friends and I would like spend all time on the internet as rowdy teens, and I could totally see like myself and my friends just deciding to fuck with people and just becoming a type of Q person just to see what would happen.
Right.
And can you imagine doing that and then it unraveling into a real fucking cult? That's like a Seinfeld plot.
Well, this is the big problem with internet irony, is that you start off ironically posting Hitler memes, and then over time, your brain begins to associate the Hitler meme with the dopamine that you get. So the way that our minds work is that we start to say, maybe Hitler good. And once we think maybe Hitler good, it's not that far from becoming an actual Nazi online. And there's a lot of things that go into it, right? I mean, most of these people are alienated, and I spend a lot of time looking at pretty far right-wing Twitter accounts, mostly for research for a book that I'm writing. But there is a strong sense of like community and acceptance there for people who wouldn't otherwise get it. But a lot of it retains that hint of irony where you can never quite tell if they're kidding or not until you log on at like 11:30 at night, and many of them are drunk and they're just like posting the N-word over and over again. You're like, okay, yeah, there's no irony behind that. You are a piece of shit, but yeah, no, I mean, man, often when I do look at really hardcore conspiracy theorists, I do think but for the grace of God go I, because I could have slipped down any of those hills. A lot of people in our circles might think that I already have, but I promise I haven't. But I could see myself going that way, man, so fast. I mean, my dad is that way. My dad's a Q guy. So, I mean, I get it, man.
I can see like how easy someone can fall into this, especially like with the way a website like YouTube is set up with those recommended videos. They only get more crazy. Like you can begin by watching something kind of innocent, like as a kid, a teen listening to some strange guy play a video game and talking, and then the recommended video is just like a Klan member or something.
Yeah. No, man, that reminds me. Do you remember a few years ago there was this thing going on where kids would watch like Dora the Explorer videos or something like that? And there were these bots that could take different characters and mix them up in this sort of hellish algorithm and spit out automated videos that were just, this is one of the things that made YouTube really clamp down on users that were spreading misinformation. This was kind of the first thing that did it, because kids would go from watching a Dora the Explorer video to like an auto-generated video of like Dora being pregnant and then Spider-Man showing up and Spider-Man also being pregnant and then them stabbing each other with knives. Like, dude, this was like, and there were thousands of these videos because they're auto-generated. Some fucking evil genius in a lab somewhere created the algorithm that could make these things happen and auto-post them to YouTube.
Yeah.
And there's one thing called the finger family that I was honestly extremely creeped out by in its most benign forms. But then you see the finger family doing and saying very strange things to like Elsa from Frozen, and you're like, oh, one day in the future when I have kids, they are never getting online ever.
I had no idea about this. That is disturbing. It reminds me a little of what do they call that? Deep fakes.
Yeah, yeah. So deepfakes didn't really become a thing that I thought they were going to be, because I saw some pretty wild deepfakes. There was a what was it? It was an interview on Jimmy Fallon where Jimmy Fallon and whoever was interviewing, I think it was like one of the people from the Avengers, like they deep faked somebody else's face onto that person. So it was like he was talking to somebody else. And it was very convincing. I haven't seen that so far, but this being the conspiracy episode, I mean, maybe we have seen that, right? Anytime Joe Biden is speaking coherently, could be a deep fake.
It seems most likely, yeah. And also, I think Jimmy Fallon just looks like a bad deep fake already.
He's just already a deep fake.
Yeah, I think he's
there's
the
there's
Phil.
some control room full of there's a control room full of like praying mantises, like the guy from Space Ghost, who are just all like saying they're saying the words, and we're seeing Jimmy Fallon's mouth move. And whenever a celeb goes on Jimmy Fallon, they're talking to somebody in a green mask.
That would make the most sense to me at this point.
Probably, dude. Probably. And what's so crazy is that, with talk shows, Ellen got outed as this kind of horrible person to work with, which people who I know who work kind of in Hollywood, it's sort of an open secret not to work at the Ellen show just because she's so nasty and mean. But both Ellen and Oprah in the conspiracy world are alleged to be human traffickers. So they have taken on that role for the Q people and the Q adjacent people.
How do you think they get that assigned role? Like, what attracts them to those people?
I think they call anybody they don't like a pedophile. I think there's a lot of projection going on there. I think that there are a lot of people. For example, there's a movie that came out on Netflix recently called Cuties, and stirred up some controversy because the poster of it, I'll be the first. It is a little gross, right? Not a little gross. It's a lot gross, right? It's like prepubescent girls, in scantily clad outfits, doing Nicki Minaj poses. Like it's not good, right? I haven't seen the film, so I don't know one way or the other, but it seems that the movie is a little bit more than that. Like the movie's maybe doing something with that imagery. But when people see shit like that and they're like, pedophile, 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 I think milady doth protest too much. And I wonder if they're not sort of like, when back in the 50s, when dudes found out that they were gay, or they don't find out that they're gay, but like they.
Oh no, I got the news.
No, exactly. They don't. I'm so sorry. They don't find out that they're gay, but like they're fighting against themselves being gay, like the dad in American Beauty or something.
Yeah.
And so it turns them into these big homophobes or whatever. I think probably a similar thing is going on with pedophilia, where if you see a pedophile around every corner, I wonder if you're not just like, slapping yourself in your bathroom mirror and being like, no.
Yeah.
But basically, I think that it's a label that they assign to whoever they don't particularly like. But again, this is the weird thing about conspiracies, right? Like, with most conspiracies, I think that there is a grain of truth to them. They're getting at something. I would call conspiracies, instead of just being true or fake, I would call them myths. A guy named Charles Eisenstein did this with the coronavirus. He wrote an essay called The Coronavirus Myth. And he wasn't saying that it's fake, but he's saying that the way that we've shaped it is as a myth. And the same way that, myths throughout time have meant to have like represented something in the culture that they came from and are saying something, whether or not they're literally true or literally fake. I think the conspiracy is at least saying something.
Yeah, I mean, most of them wouldn't take off if there wasn't something for it to stand on to begin with, right?
Hmm.
They they have to have some type of a shred of evidence proving that it could be right. It can't just be something like too random. You recently tweeted something. What a dumb thing to say. You recently tweeted something, but
Yeah.
you tweeted something about. I don't have it in front of me now, but I remembered it. How a lot of people think we embrace conspiracy theories because the idea of something being all made of chaos is too terrifying. But in reality, the fact that everything would line up and like connect is way more terrifying than something being chaos. Did you want to expand on that thought?
I would love to. Yeah, that's a thought that I've had for a really long time because when I talk to certain friends of mine on the phone, they're very fond of catching me whenever I say they want to do this or they want to do that. And they always say, who is they? Who is this they that you're talking about? And then I have to get into the weeds and explain who exactly the they is that I'm talking about. But that kind of line of questioning comes from a place that believes that the world is not run by any particular set of people, right? Asking me who is they is essentially, it's one of those things like when you ask a question, kind of like, uh, are you sure? When people say, are you sure? They're basically saying that your idea is bad. So this question is meant to tell me that they believe that the world is not particularly run by cabals of people who make decisions that then trickle down to us, because that's absurd. And the reasoning for that, I have heard this so many times that I can't even count, is that the world is somehow scarier if everything is chaos, if nothing has any kind of, telos or objective or whatever. It's all just random chaos, and that's the scariest thing. But like I said in the tweet, I think that conspiracy theorists, if you've ever met these people, which I have, um, they are the most paranoid, scared people in the entire world, and they're not scared of the chaos. They're scared of the organization. They're scared of the fact that this is a well put together system of psyops, right? Psychological operations that are meant to lead to a certain point. So I think that that particular argument holds no water at all. I don't think that these people are trying to arrange a chaotic world into a neat little story that they can tell, because they are not neat little stories either. They read like the writings of a schizophrenic. None of the conspiracy world is actually easy. Until, well, I would qualify that by saying that once it trickles down into something like Q, once it becomes a cult, it does become easy, because there's a easy good guy and an easy bad guy. Where, Donald Trump is the hero, and the deep state, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, people like that are all the bad guys. I'll give them that. That does fit into that binary. But there's a lot of maybe sort of anarcho conspiracy theorists who don't trust anybody, which is where I would put my personal politics and beliefs, which can often be quite alienating and depressing, because you have no home.
Yeah. It seems to me, going off of that thought, that if the universe operated on chaos, right, at least there's some like comfort knowing that you can control what you personally do. But if someone else is fucking pulling the strings, then it becomes more terrifying because you kind of just lose any sense of control about what happens in your own life.
Oh, that is so brilliant. No, that's great. You get it 100%. Um, that is exactly what scares conspiracy theorists. That goes down to like things like 5G and bodily autonomy. That goes down to the different psyops and kind of like mental autonomy, vaccines, which lead to, again, bodily autonomy, but like sort of the vaccines vary from they're dangerous to they cause autism, which in my opinion is not that bad, to, they're going to put the chip of Satan into you, and, you know, you're going to be condemned to hell forever. So it's a spectrum too, right? This is what, I know I personally was very general when I said conspiracy, but I think a lot of people think of conspiracy as the people who think that conspiracy theorists think that vaccines are the mark of the beast, and those people do exist. But the kind of world that I live in and run in is a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah. Vaccine's a little tricky, man. I mean, I'm pretty pro-vaccine. I, I don't. But a lot of people will go, I don't understand how anyone could be anti-vax, and I do get it. I get where they could be coming from. I understand the reason why you would want to resist any type of thing being forced upon you. I mean, it's the same reason a lot of people resist like doing the mask is something that's being forced upon you. I totally get that. It makes sense. I don't always agree with these people, but I don't think these fucking aliens they baffle me and they feel so random. No, I get it.
Well, okay, so here's what I would do, right? If I so I'm an adult and I have bodily autonomy, so I can decide at the moment what I put into my body, whether that's shitty foods, alcohol, drugs, whatever. I have the right to figure that out for myself. So when it comes to vaccines, I can figure that out for myself. Now, one day, again, when children are involved, and children are supposed to get a schedule of vaccines, all I would do is I would just read into it. And I think that I'm a savvy enough reader of the literature now, where it's like I don't go to InfoWars and just be like, what does Alex Jones think about vaccines? Oh, they're bad? Okay.
That'd be a great bracelet.
What would Alex Jones do?
Yeah.
It's made of colloidal silver. It's good, man. Keeps the bacteria away.
If you buy it on his website, you get like 3 bottles of brain pills too, so that helps.
We could definitely talk about Alex Jones, man, because that's such a fallen hero. But he used to be awesome. Well, I'll talk about it in a second. But like, just to finish up on vaccines, I would figure out what they did, because I personally think that like I'm both smart enough and I'm smart enough to have smart friends who can kind of direct me in the correct direction to get the proper schedule for the kid. But I wouldn't just trust a doctor, right? So this is probably the first majorly controversial thing that I've said on your show so far, and probably not the last, but I don't just trust doctors. And the reason for that is very simple. I went to school for English, right? Completely stupid waste of time, by the way. If anybody here is listening to this and they're thinking about going to college, don't do it. Just become a welder or something. But so I went to college, and while I was in college, I knew a lot of other people who were also in college. Some of those people were medical students. And I can tell you from experience that the ability to read things in a book and regurgitate information does not necessarily mean that you're a smart person. It means that you're a privileged person. So a doctor saying something doesn't hold any weight for me. I kind of have to be convinced, essentially, right? Is that controversial? That might be controversial. I don't know.
I think maybe. Mm-hmm. I can tell by how quiet I got that yes, it was controversial. You don't see me making any jokes.
Well, no, exactly. But this is the exact problem: is that in the Middle Ages, the priests were the only ones with the access to the Bible, and they told everybody what God wanted, and you never questioned the priests because they had the absolute knowledge of what was in the Bible. And I think we're unfortunately coming to a point like that with science, where if I'm going to debate the minutia of a medical procedure with a medical professional, I will almost certainly be defeated. But if I'm thinking in a kind of more common sense, holistic, systems kind of way, like a systems thinking sort of way. I think that we can make decisions. And I think that we should try to be convinced. I don't think that we should just give this power over to this class of people who put 7 years in school. Like, really, man? Like some 26-year-old doctor is going to tell me XYZ about this thing? I'm like, bro, you've been in school your whole life. You know, I might trust an 80-year-old doctor, maybe, but I don't know. I'm very skeptical.
I feel like we live in a time when we can we can teach ourselves basically anything if we spend enough time Googling the right things and reading the right books. And I do think you should just try your best to educate yourself, and you don't have to listen to just any one person. It's good to make up your mind the way you can.
Think about the doctor who killed Prince, right? Think about the doctor who killed Michael Jackson. Those were medical doctors. They went to the same school as other medical doctors. They might have had their licenses revoked at certain periods of time, and they might have done shady shit, but at the end of the day, they're still people. So I don't buy this idea that because you have a lab coat on, which, by the way, priests' robes, doctors' coats, it's all working symbolically in our heads to appoint them some kind of authority. It's like, I don't know you. I got to get to know you first. I know doctors who are incredibly smart that I would trust with anything. And man, I love them to death, but I know some doctors who are dumb as hell. So it's kind of like, it's a balance, I guess.
I like reading up about like the fake doctors from like the early first half of the 20th century. Like those people who would just say, "Yeah, I'm a doctor now," and would do crazy shit. Like, I can't think of his name now, but there was this one dude who decided like to solve men who couldn't impregnate their wives. He would put goat scrotums inside their testicles, and it didn't do anything, but
that's amazing. I thought you were going to say that he just fucked their wives. Like, bro, I got this, dude. I'm a doctor. Trust me.
I have that medical jizz.
Dude, I shoot those winners, man.
Man. I didn't do a lot of preparation for this, but I did the Google list of conspiracy theories, and that was fun.
That'll work, man. Let's
do it. About the Frozen conspiracy? The movie.
Say it again?
The movie Frozen. There's also a conspiracy behind that.
Oh no, I don't. Tell me about it.
The reason is, well, you know about the age-old conspiracy of Walt Disney being frozen, right?
I do.
Yeah, so they made this movie, so when someone would Google Disney Frozen, this movie would come up instead. I like that. That makes sense to me. I believe it. I think Disney is up to some shit, man.
Oh, Disney is 100% up to some shit. In the same way that every major mega corporation in the United States is up to some shit, right? My whole basis of conspiracy theories comes down to two things: power and money. And I think that people like you and I, who sort of live our lives, we're regular guys, we don't quite understand what people who are obsessed with power and money will do to both keep the power and money that they have and advance that, right? And like make it grow, you know? And you can see that in somebody like Jeff Bezos, right? Since the coronavirus started, he made what, 13 billion or something? He became a 200 billionaire, you know? Which, by the way, it's funny to me that there are some people out there who are like, yeah, let's go for a trillion. Like, there are people out there who want Jeff Bezos to be a trillionaire, which is the dumbest possible thing that you could want.
Wait,
but
I haven't felt that. Some like fools like, oh yeah, I wish that guy had more money. That's a new one to me.
Oh yeah, there's like there are simps for Bezos and also for Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk is like the dumbest rich. Like, he's like the worst version of Batman we could have possibly had.
Yeah.
Right? Like a rich guy who is just fucking dumb. Made his money because his parents stole precious mineral mines from black people in South Africa. And that's where his fortune started. And then he just started making fuck ugly cars. And fucking rich conservatives, libs, doesn't matter, just fucking love him. Think he's great. By the way, for listeners, I don't actually separate very often between liberal and conservative. That's not my axis. Mine is rich or poor. So that's typically how I come at stuff. So I'll probably stop using like liberal and conservative language, because that's a trick. That's a trick. But anyway, but people love that shit.
Anyone who has enough money, the fucking sole objective becomes not letting anyone else get that much money.
Yes, not getting that much money and also making more of it, right? I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because this is kind of sort of getting to my whole life belief, right? Which I sort of laid out earlier. But whenever I talk about things like politics, I think a lot of people might see that and think that I'm some kind of like nihilist, or I don't believe in anything. I just believe that we've been fighting the wrong enemy the whole time. So I'm very anti-voting. I'm very anti, Biden or Trump. I think that's all very silly, because both of them are going to be largely the same, which when Trump won, I was at a BizarroCon.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to BizarroCon?
Nah.
They're great, man. BizarroCons are great. Bizarros are great people. But I do remember Trump had won. It was like 2 days later, and I had said something like, "Oh, they're going to be pretty much the same. It wouldn't really matter, Clinton or Trump. It's about it." And somebody just like lost their mind at me. They had to go to bed because they were just like they were so pissed off at that idea. But I stand by that.
I don't know if I do. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I agree with that completely, but I'm not going to go to bed. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
like,
you're not going to go to bed right now?
Yeah.
End of podcast.
No,
No, it's totally
That's
fine to
it.
disagree with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that disagreeing is perfect and great, and people can talk about stuff or whatever. I don't really agree with completely shutting down. This kind of goes back to conspiracies in a way where it's like you don't have to necessarily, like, the whole idea of like shutting these people down and and silencing them is part of the problem. I think that if people talked more often, then maybe we'd get someplace. But so you're going to vote for Biden?
I am, yeah. I don't like him, though, but I also don't like the little guy even more.
Why? What did he do? What's wrong with Trump?
I don't know, man. I hate guys with the red hats. No, I don't know, man. I mean, okay, so let's go back and say Clinton won, who I also despise. But, I mean, do you really see, like, the fucking rise in white supremacy still taking place like it did?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
100%. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. It would probably be worse because, well, maybe not worse, but about the same. Because it would give those people someone to hate. The thing about the right wing that I don't think a lot of people get is that they are just full of hate. Like it's just brimming over.
It's nothing but hate.
It's nothing but hate, yeah. And so their hate is already boiling over, and they've got their boy in office right now. So imagine if it was a woman, and not just a woman, but a Clinton who was in office. Somebody who was the bad guy, like their Darth Vader, was in office. I think it would have galvanized a lot of people. And I think that when things like coronavirus hit, which it was going to hit either way, whether it was Trump or
right.
Clinton.
Right.
I think that what we're seeing right now is people on the right sort of, fighting against restrictions or whatever. But if it had been Clinton in office, they would have still been fighting against those restrictions, but they would have been fighting against Hillary Clinton. So honestly, dude, it makes me a little nervous to have like a Dem in power right now because of how violent and insane these people actually are, which I'm not saying is a good reason to have Trump for 4 more years. I'm just saying that, like, I definitely think we would have seen the same, if not more, white supremacy.
Man, I don't know. I do see where you're coming from, definitely. I wonder, like, how much of him being the fucking president and basically being the postal boy for this shit
Uh,
has, I don't know, uh, recruited even more people into this type of mindset.
I see what you're saying, but I think that if you look at right wing Twitter, which whatever,
Are you
again,
talking about Gambino's spittle again?
if you look at right wing Twitter, they don't think that he's done enough.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the Q people. I'm talking about the actual Nazis. Like the actual Nazis don't like Trump
Mm-hmm.
because they feel like he hasn't done enough. They want a real kind of strongman in. Whenever the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, and particularly in Minneapolis, where it was very kind of violent and fiery, and in Portland, those people wanted him to go in and like crush people. It wasn't enough that he was coming. He was sending, I think they were ICE agents, right? The people in the unmarked vans. Was it
Yeah.
ICE or something else?
It was
I think it was
ice.
ICE, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When he was sending the ICE agents in unmarked vans, they would have liked for him to have gone in there with live ammunition and just mowed them down.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like they're not huge Trump people either. They're what I call frog people. Like they have embraced the Pepe full on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like they,
it's the same
yeah,
type. I mean, I think it's the same type of people who fucking go up and shoot a school or a church and then they live stream it for 8chan.
yeah, yeah. Like that whole like Pepe and 4chan kind of shit is really interesting and bizarre. That's another thing that I would call a cult. Um, do you know about the conspiracy theory about Trump's election?
No,
About that?
tell me. I might, but
Oh,
maybe I don't.
this
Maybe
is
it's,
great.
yeah.
This Well, this is great. So basically, on 4chan, before Trump was elected, people adopted Pepe the Frog as their sort of symbol, right? I think Pepe is a hate symbol now. Um,
Has to be,
which
yeah.
poor Pepe was created by a guy named Matt Fury, who seems like a sweetheart, who was, just making a cartoon about, animal friends hanging out together. And there's this. The most famous comic is of this I think dog or walking in on Pepe taking a piss, and Pepe's pissing with his pants down, and the wolf says, "What are you doing? Why are you pissing with your pants down?" And Pepe says, "Feels good, man." And like that's the Pepe face that we've seen kind of forever, right?
Yeah.
So 4chan adopted that and kind of perverted it into something called groypers. Have you heard of groypers?
I have not.
Oh, dude, I'm giving you a fucking education today.
Hell yeah.
So, groypers are the next evolution of Pepe, where these kind of fat frogs. They're like Pepes, but they're fat, and they make groypers for everybody. Like people who are like they make a Trump groyper, a Clinton groyper. It's this like frog with its fingers interlaced, like it's thinking pensively about something. And that's when it kind of got much more racist and weird. But so on 4chan, they have Pepe as the symbol, right? And they begin to, instead of saying LOL, they say kek, right? Kek, which kek is like a ancient Egyptian frog deity of which is also like a god of chaos, right?
What the fuck?
Yeah. So they start saying kek, and basically on 4chan, every post is random, and every person who posts there is random. That's the appeal of it. You're anonymous the whole time. But every post begins with 7, and then is a random assortment of numbers. And about 2 months before Trump won the presidency, there was a post from a Pepe guy, a frog dude, that just said Trump will win. And that post was like all 7s. It was 7777777. So when you get into like the symbolic, magical realm of that, there's a lot of people who think that like the Pepes are doing some kind of like image magic with that guy. And, if you engage with that kind of thing, you're getting sucked into a world of Picatrix style image magic. So yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Still so much going on in this universe that we just don't know about. I didn't know anything about this, and I imagine it's fucking significant for so many people who are alive right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the big thing, is that if you just spend your time on Twitter or Facebook, particularly if you spend time with writers, so writers are, again, not to do the political thing, but I'll do it. They're basically like, they're libs, right? So I consider myself to be left. Like I'm very, very far left, and I think of libs as a sort of different thing. But like when you look at writers, anybody who has a specific ideology, you can usually trace that to who pays them the best. And the New York publishing industry is almost exclusively run by rich, white, liberal people who have extremely milquetoast liberal politics. And you see that recreated all the way down to people who are kind of on our level, who, whether they know it or not, are adopting the sort of political beliefs of the bourgeoisie and parroting them because they want a job, right? So when you're in writer circles, basically, you're just going to see these kind of thoughts about politics and the left and this, that, and the other just passed around, and nobody ever questions it. Every once in a while, you'll have somebody who says something that's offensive, that and the community immediately sort of swarms them and pushes them out. But the downside to that is that, bro, I've walked on the dark side. You know, I spend time in the shit. Like, I know what the bad guys are thinking, and I have a better understanding of it. And by virtue of that, I have a better understanding of how the world works. Like, I can't even talk to a lot of other writers about this because they're so in their kind of, you know, if you think this, or this, then you're a Nazi and I shouldn't talk to you. And it's so much more deeper than that.
I think I said this when I was on a Yule show, which should be going live the same day this episode goes live.
Swapcast, baby.
Swapcast. But I do think, like, if you do meet someone or encounter someone who is maybe a little racist, and you just completely shut them out, all it does is push them further to the fucking Nazi side. I mean, that's how someone goes from being, just being a little racist to being ultra racist. Because what side do they have then? What community do they have left besides? Yeah.
Right. And so picture yourself, you know, you're a writer, you're in this kind of lib circle or whatever, and then one day you have a question about something like Black Lives Matter, and, you know, there's riots and fires, and you're saying, oh God, I don't really know if this is the thing that we should be doing, right? I don't think we should be shooting each other in the streets and breaking windows and this, that, and the other. And then people, of course, call you a Nazi. They say, like, well, the left hasn't shot anybody. The right's the only person who shoots people, you fucking idiot. Why don't you go die in a fire, you know? And you're inundated with this kind of hateful response from a tribe who has a dogma that they're not going to break from. Well, now you feel completely alone. All of your friends have left you. Nobody wants to associate with you because you're the guy who said the dumb thing about Black Lives Matter, right? Which, you know, Black Lives Matter, I think, is problematic, but it's not like evil. But I think that you should be able to criticize these things and talk about them. But so you're this person and you've been pushed out, and then there are these people who really are racist, who who post memes of, like, Hitler, right? Actually, I was thinking for a second, because I've seen I also think that what the right's doing right now is mind control, so we can get into that in a second.
Okay.
But so you see these people and they're like, hey man, you're cool. Over here you can say all that shit. You can say whatever you want to. We're not going to judge you at all, man. In fact, you're super right. And not only are you right, you are actually an ascended being. You're part of the master race because you get it. And these fucking, you know, insert your anti-Semitic slur here, right? Like they're trying to push you down. They're trying to control you, and then they're gone. They're gone forever. Like that's their new family.
Yeah, that's how kids like get fucking mixed up in skinhead gangs because they have no one else to go. No one else gives a shit about them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, it's really rough, and it's really easy from where we're at when we have an in group. It's easy to kind of dunk on these people and push them out and say like, actually, I don't care if a Nazi gets his feelings hurt or does this, that, or the other. And I'm like, oh man, that's it's dangerous territory, man.
Yeah.
It's like I know your heart's in the right place, and I agree with you, but what you're doing right now is creating little foot soldiers. And if your response to that is like, well, we'll just kill them, that's where I hop off your train.
That's too
Because
much. That's
I'm
that.
not trying to kill people, dude. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to fight anybody.
I mean, is it really controversial to believe like, well, why can't we just talk this shit out?
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe talking that shit out doesn't lead to something that people are all that happy with, you know? But like the thing about talking things out is that both sides leave pissed off and feeling like they didn't get, the best deal. But that's fucking life, man. That's how you have to do this kind of shit. And yes, I understand that there's one side that thinks that you're a lesser person. I get that. That's really tough. I'm white, so I don't have to grapple with that. Um, but people who are not white do have to grapple with that. All that said, it is what it is, man. Like, kill him or don't kill him. I don't know, but that's the end game for that kind of thing. So I'm sorry that burden has to get shouldered by other people, but it is what it is.
Yeah, like I'm not promising that I have any fucking solution because I sure as hell don't. Like what you said, like coming up with this election, man, it's gonna be bad either way. I think, especially if he loses, it's all gonna go crazy.
Here's
And
my prediction.
I don't have a
Oh,
solution.
well, here's my prediction for the thing. I think Trump's going to win, but I think that there's going to be contention about his victory. I think that there's already been sort of the ground's been laid for that to be questioned. Also, with some back to conspiracy, with some war games that have been played by the super rich, that have been planning for this kind of thing for a long time. I can explain that. But I think that Trump's going to win. I think that Biden and the Dems are going to contest it, and they're probably going to have good grounds to contest it on. Probably something to do with the Postal Service, and so you're going to come to this kind of stalemate where Trump's not going to lose or leave because he says, "No, I won. Like, why would I leave?" And the Dems won't concede, and then it's going to get real hairy after that. I think we're leading into a period of civil unrest that will make Black Lives Matter, protests and riots or whatever seem tame by comparison.
And that's a bold thing to say too, because I don't know if you've been watching like the fucking live streams or anything from people like at some of these protests, but shit is rough.
It's rough out there. Yeah, no, it is. I've seen a few,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it'll get worse. I think we'll have like a very minor uh, civil war is a big word, but we'll definitely have some skirmishes. Everybody just wants to fight right now, which is why I say the UFC should get on this and just everybody bring their best fighter. Bring the biggest guy from the left and the biggest guy from the right and let them beat the shit out of each other. It doesn't determine any political thing. It's just catharsis. It's just like, let's just let it out.
On one side, what we have The Rock, and then on the right side, who do we have? Like Gambino?
On the right?
I don't know. I just felt like dunking on him. He's a good guy.
Oh, no,
I love him.
Poor Gambino. He's taking a beating on this one. We love you.
So you were telling me about mind control.
Yeah, right. So when you go to right wing Twitter, a lot of the most popular accounts kind of have videos of like the proud white race, right? So white people back in antiquity riding chariots and being warriors, Vikings, shit like that. You know what I mean? It's all designed to make the people who see it feel like that's just like me, even though most of these people are not anything close to those people. But the whole time that they do it, they have you ever seen a black sun? It's a symbol that Joseph Goebbels would use along with the swastika. So the swastika kind of became infamous for being the symbol of the Nazis. It's actually a sort of Hindu peace symbol, right? Like it's a very ancient symbol that means balance and peace. Most people probably know this. But it was adopted by the Nazis, and Hitler would put it everywhere. I was reading Human Smoke by Nicholson Baker, and Hitler would he'd have swastikas like in the curtains, on the carpet, like everywhere, because it's a hypnotic thing, right? It's this, if you imagine a swastika turning, and you have a kind of hypnotist's, spiral. So the black sun is kind of like that. It's different from the swastika, but it's also it's a very interesting looking but troubled symbol. And in the back, like superimposed rather, on these white supremacist videos will be a spinning black sun. So every time I see that, I'm like, oh, this is hypnotism. They're just hypnotizing people, basically. Like you can get caught under that spell of, seeing these images of proud white people superimposed over, a spinning black sun, and you're just it's the most vulgar kind of indoctrination into a cult that I could think of.
Seems like it would also make a good one of those baby mobiles that spin above a crib.
Yeah. Just swastikas and black suns.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no.
I think little dad's racist, baby.
No, I'm just teaching him to be proud of his heritage. That's all. It's heritage, not hate. How many times have we heard that shit?
I have that tattooed on my back, yeah.
So you had a list of conspiracies. What else you got?
Okay. Oh, I have a fun one that's it's going to be hilarious to talk about. What are your thoughts on Sandy Hook denials? That's one I have a bit more difficult time empathizing with, man.
Sure, of course, yeah. So the Sandy Hook deniers are incorrect. It's a thing that really happened. It's a tragedy. Alex Jones was wrong, and I think that Alex Jones has admitted that he was wrong. I'm not really sure how good that apology is when, grieving families were sort of inundated with bullshit from troglodyte idiot, Pizzagate people. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's a pretty big problem. One thing to take away from Sandy Hook, though, is that they bring forth the idea of crisis actors, and crisis actors are a real thing. Not in the way necessarily that they put it, but they are real. So I personally know a crisis actor. They're not my friend. We don't hang out, but I do know somebody who has done crisis acting as like a job.
Okay. What can you tell me about that?
So at Johns Hopkins, what they'll do is they'll hire people with theater backgrounds to engage in crisis scenarios, and they'll take video of the crisis scenario. With under the auspices of it being a training video for XYZ. So let's say there's a bombing, right? So a crisis actor will get done up in makeup to be all fucked up, and ostensibly it's supposed to be a training video for people who so Johns Hopkins will sell this to the military and places like that so that they can watch these videos, and then they get put on pause, and some guy who looks like George C. Scott will walk in and say, so what would you do in this situation? Right. So the footage exists, but then that footage gets repurposed, as footage often does, to, sort of be used by the media for different purposes, so it's not like crisis actors, like in the Sandy Hook sense, where you have people who say oh, well, this dad looks like this guy who was at ground zero at 9/11, that's where the problems come in. But the idea of the crisis actor is actually real, and it has been used recently, most recently in coronavirus stuff. There was a point in time where both CNN and NBC showed pictures of or video of a hospital that was quote unquote like overwhelmed with patients, and that hospital was not in New York at all, right? That was actually a hospital it was like an old folks home in Italy before coronavirus ever hit. So what I'm saying is like this is like old school crisis actor footage that was just sent to CNN and NBC, and they just used it unthinkingly. So this is where conspiracy theory becomes really valuable to kind of think with, because you can see something like that and be like, okay, these are not paid actors who are pretending to mourn the deaths of their children. That's not true. But at the same time, everything that you see that's on the news is not real. So we go back to that idea of the myth, you know, and I've just been sort of both alarmed and really kind of despondent over the idea that people have just recently, with the coronavirus stuff and with a lot of stuff that the government's doing, have seen that and just accepted it if it's on their side. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like, oh, that's definitely true. And I'm like, bro, people have been lying about everything since people formed governments. Lying is not new. So what do you think makes 2020 any different when these media companies control the things that people are allowed to see? I don't get why that's so hard to understand.
I mean, pretty much any conspiracy stems from the government is a lying piece of shit, and that is true most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. So again, you have some other myths like, you know, the moon landing is a big one. Like, did we go to the moon? The answer is yes, we did go to the moon. Of course we went to the moon. But would a camera from the 1960s survive a trip to the moon? It's questionable. It's questionable.
Is that one of the conspiracies about it, that the camera wouldn't have survived it? I didn't know that.
It is, but the incorrect conclusion from that is that we never went to the moon, right?
Yeah.
Where there's tons of evidence that we actually did go to the moon. What I'm saying is that we went to the moon, but the footage that we see from the moon,
yeah,
possibly might not be real.
A reenactment, right? Like
exactly.
America's Most Wanted, man. They would do this.
Yep. That's right. That's right. America's Most Wanted would do that. Imagine I wonder if cops ever did that, where they like get some, you know, dude who's super cracked out and is naked except for, you know, a pair of Chucks, and be like, can we refilm this? This is for a show. Can you be a bit more animated when they put you in the squad car? But
did you, speaking of cops, did you listen to this mini-series podcast called Running from Cops?
No.
You should check it out, man. This guy, he did a deep dive into the show. Him and his team, they watched every episode and like came up with all these stats, and then they tracked down like some of the people who were arrested on it. That show's fucked, man.
Fucked as in fake, or fucked as in like what? So
much of it was like they didn't get permission to do things. They would false evidence, and then when the people would go to court, they would just get dismissed because it was so fucked up and they had nothing to stand on. But then they would still put the episodes out without any corrections and just ruin these people's lives.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I will have to check that out. But okay, so we're already seeing exactly what I'm talking about. This is why I don't understand why conspiracy theorists get such a bad rap. Maybe it's because they're antisocial losers. But we know that things like this exist, right? Like, we know that cops plant evidence. We know that whenever there's a camera involved, we know that reality TV is not reality. We know that it's largely scripted. And we know that there are people who have a ton of money who have the influence on other people whose livelihoods depend on saying yes to these people, that they can push an agenda on whoever they want to, right? And that's kind of a key thing there, because I feel like I lose a lot of people when I talk about really rich people having an agenda, right? But again, you're playing in an area of wealth and power that you and I don't understand. And these people really do feel like they have the right to control the world. And they will do so by whatever means they can possibly do. So it's really not that hard to imagine that a lot of the shit that we see is fucking fake.
Most of us are so distracted by just trying to get rent paid on time. We don't have time to even consider these things. And it allows these rich sons of bitches to just basically roam the planet like it's a playground.
Dude, do you know what it would be like to have $100 billion?
Doesn't even seem like a thing that's possible.
This kid did a TikTok once where he tried to give an example of what Jeff Bezos's wealth looked like with grains of rice. And it's absurd. It's the most money you could possibly imagine. You have infinite power. Well, if you're a person who is concerned with power and money, and you've maxed out on money, what's left?
Think about it like a video game, man. If you have enough money, the planet becomes a video game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the planet becomes a game, and also, I think personally, so we can talk about like Bill Gates, right? Because Bill Gates is a big boogeyman for a lot of people. I actually don't think that Bill Gates is a bad guy. I don't think that he thinks that he's a bad guy, is maybe a better way to phrase that.
Do you think anyone thinks of themselves as the bad guy?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No. So in Bill Gates's mind, everything that he does is for the betterment of the planet. But it becomes problematic when you realize that Bill Gates's father is a hardcore eugenicist. Well, I'm not like my dad. I'm sure you're not like your dad. So maybe Bill Gates is not like his dad. But the things that Bill Gates does, the things that he uses his money for, could potentially have insidious side effects that we have to pay attention to, right? So I don't buy into any of this, like he's a lizard person and he's trying to, control the whole world. It's nothing like that. It's the danger of a person who has more money than God and who wants to be God. That's the problem with Bill Gates.
It's problematic, man. It's a slippery slope once you get that kind of money. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can't even fucking comprehend having that kind of money.
You know what I would do if I had that much money?
What would you do?
I'd buy an Xbox.
A 360?
I'd buy, whatever the next one is. Is there a next Xbox after 360?
I think there's like 3 million. I don't know. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Not a big gamer, but I'd probably just become a gamer.
Yeah? What games would you buy?
Oh, I'd buy the Dark Souls games. Those would probably keep me occupied for a pretty long time. But I definitely would not be forcing vaccines that kill children in Africa. That is definitely what I would not be doing, which is what Bill Gates does. You know what I mean? And again, thinks he's doing a good thing. You look at these people's videos, like the videos that these multinational corporations put out that show like, oh, we're doing this and that, and it's good. Man, it's tough. It's more difficult than that,
Let's move away a bit from this and talk about something we haven't mentioned at all. Aliens.
Aliens, okay.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, man? Are they real? Are they being hidden from us by the government? Or what's up?
They're real. Yeah, no, aliens are real. But any government disclosure that you see about aliens is more than likely cover for, I'm going to use that bad word again, cover for deep state tech that they've had for a while that they want to sort of explain away. I think that... So which specific aliens are we talking about here? Are we talking about like the Roswell crash? Or
let's begin with that. Yeah, why not?
I mean, yeah, that's probably real. That's probably a real thing that happened. I think that the biggest problem with alien contact and abduction and crash landings and stuff like that is that people try to unify them into one thing. And I think they're probably a bunch of different things, like a ton of different things. Like it's not one race of entities that's coming down and doing very specific things. Like there's the ones that turn the cows inside out, and there's the ones who give people religious experiences, and there's the ones who have the saucer technology and the ball technology and the like. It's a bunch of shit happening all at once that you'll go crazy trying to fit into one kind of theory of everything.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe aliens is too big of a topic for this episode already.
Maybe.
It's you're right though. I don't know if I've ever like sat down and thought about it, but yeah, it would be crazy to be like, yeah, why should there be humans and then there's one other species of people who live outside of this planet? There has to be so many. I don't know. I mean, I certainly believe they're out. I think it's pretty selfish to think that human beings are the only creatures that have gained this type of consciousness. So I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like, we already have an alien species on this earth, and it's called the mushroom. Like the psilocybin mushroom, like came from space. Terrence McKenna talked about this at length. It's something that came here on an asteroid and kind of seeded the world, and it's definitely its own kind of rhizomatic, strange intelligence. So we already had one alien crash. I think that the podcast that I was just on, Rune Soup, with Gordon White describes things like technology and stuff like that as alien crashes, right? Like they're arrivals into this world of new ways of looking at things that completely change our paradigms. And so, like, the iPhone is an alien crash. But as far as the New York Times saying like, oh, the government released this footage and there was this crazy thing that zipped by fighter jets, dude, they're never going to tell you what the real shit is, right? And this is probably where my conspiracy brain both helps me and hinders me, is that as soon as there's an official government release of something, I'm like, that's fucking fake. There's no way that's real. Like, I'm an alien believer 100%, but if the fucking New York Times says it, I'm like, not that one. They're doing something. They're trying to slip something by you.
The only way we will ever actually find out anything about aliens is if they destroy the planet, or if one like lands in your fucking backyard, and then you have to like adopt it somehow, which would be pretty cool.
It would be cool. And then like maybe you ride a bike and then the bike like takes off and you're kind of like flying with like on your bicycle. You have the little alien in your basket in your front seat. Like that could be a thing too.
Yeah, maybe, as you guys are flying above the moon or whatever, you just kind of lock eye contact and you realize, oh man, this alien and I were meant to be together. And you keep going into the woods and you make sweet love.
Yeah, you might make sweet love, and you're feeding it Reese's Pieces while you're fucking it.
Yeah.
You're just like...
Well, that's how I have sex with anyone.
Just by feeding it Reese's Pieces.
Yeah. Don't you?
And like, they're like, Max, I need my pieces. Oh God, I was about to come, but here you go. Here's another Reese's Pieces.
Gotta go back to the gas station and get a new box. That's what kids call edging. That's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Edging is a conspiracy theory.
The female orgasm.
That's definitely a conspiracy
theory. Does not exist.
Mm-mm.
I've been Googling it. I don't see any evidence.
Dude, if it existed, it would have happened by now. I've had a lot of sex.
Yeah.
Not to brag, but, if it existed by now, it would have happened. So, I'm just saying.
I think it's just another Clinton conspiracy.
Probably, yeah. The Clintons. The Clintons.
Oh, shit, man. If you add up all the numbers that make up Clinton's name, it spells out 69.
That's so tight. Maybe I should have voted for her. I don't know. That actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm with it. So before we do end this, I think it would be dumb if I did an episode about conspiracies and we didn't talk about MKUltra a little bit.
Okay, we can
Yeah,
do that.
yeah. What are your thoughts about that? I've have you read this book? I haven't read it yet, but I own it. It's called Chaos.
Chaos. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Have you
No,
read
it's
it
a
yet?
great. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I've only
Um,
listened to the Rogan episode with the author. One of the best
mm,
episodes too. That was fascinating.
so for anybody who is still listening, by the way, thank you. Um, who is on the fence about conspiracy theories, I would recommend reading Chaos. Um, because I think that'll put to bed a lot of the concerns that you might have about what I'm saying about like would a government do fucked up shit to its citizens for like a certain end, right? So the major kind of thesis of Chaos is that and it was also like before I like when I read Chaos, I had most of this info already because I had read Sinister Forces by Peter Levenda, which is kind of like a pulp book that didn't really get a lot of recognition, but just want to shout out Peter here. Peter is now writing books with Tom DeLonge from Blink 182
What?
about aliens. So
That sounds like a conspiracy in itself.
it really does. So basically, the idea is that Charles Manson was like a science experiment, right? He was a troubled dude. He was in and out of jail his whole life. He was very. He has a dark past, man. Like a lot of molestation and gross stuff happened to this dude. But he was kind of a petty criminal who got taken in by the MKUltra program, which I should say was preceded by what the fuck was it? I know that after it was MK Often, but I don't remember the one before it. Was it Bluebird? I don't know. Anyway, the CIA had all these kind of operations around LSD and its potential uses for basically mind control of the populace, and they dosed a lot of people without their knowledge or consent to see what they would do. And Charles Manson was sort of one of these people who was institutionalized and was picked as a person who would be a trial run for, LSD. And LSD, if you're dealing with your buddies and you have a good mindset, it's a fantastic drug to take. Everybody should do at least mushrooms, if not acid. But when you're somebody like Charles Manson, it turns you into a complete psychopath, right? So basically, what MKUltra did was, have you seen Stranger Things?
I have.
Right, where what's that girl's name?
11?
11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Where
shit!
she's
11,
kind of like
9/11. She's 9 in the show. Oh fuck! Go on.
That's good, man. That's good. You're indoctrinated. But basically, like, with her having all these wires hooked up to her head, and she's doing, psi experiments in a lab, that's all for largely true, right? They were pretty much doing that. You can go onto the CIA's website now and look at crazy shit that they did, where they had a guy astral project onto Mars like 500,000 years ago and see aliens and shit like that. Like the CIA was doing very strange experiments on people that are now, because of the Freedom of Information Act, largely known. But
It kind of makes you wonder, like, that's the stuff they allowed to be released. What wasn't released?
exactly, right? Like what was shredded? That again, you're thinking like a conspiracy theorist.
Uh-oh.
Like what did they not release? So basically, it was a big mind control experiment, and it has some records that we can find. I think Often, which came after that, has much fewer records because they were much better about shredding shit and not showing it. But it's everything from like telekinesis to telepathy to mind control to, to all these kind of things. And I have a hard time believing that just all ended and they said, well, that didn't work, so we'll just move on. I think that they're still using it to this day. I think it's been subsumed into the internet and media and things that we look at now. I think we're all deeply hypnotized by whatever we are currently obsessed with.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Did you see that Netflix documentary, Willemwood?
I loved it. Yeah, that was great.
That was badass.
That was who's that guy?
He did the Thin Blue Line, I think it's called.
He did. Yeah. I hung out with his son once, actually.
Oh yeah.
Hamilton Morris, Errol Morris is the guy's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hamilton is his son. I'd gone to see Duncan Trussell's podcast live, and the guest was Hamilton Morris. And after the show, I was drunk, and I went up to them and said, "Can I hang out with you guys?" And they said, "Yeah, it's a free country," which is like a polite way of saying we would rather you didn't, but okay.
Yeah.
So I went to a bar with the two of them and watched them debate God for a while. But anyway, so yeah, it's an Errol Morris thing. Yeah, I mean, like, that guy didn't know. Like, he didn't know he was being dosed with LSD, and he ended up getting thrown out of a window. Maybe.
That's the big build of this podcast, and also any conspiracy, huh? Maybe.
I would just ask listeners to really think about this, right? And think that if there are these technologies that can alter your brain or control a population, keep people in fear, move kind of like the pawns around the board of people who want to move those pawns around the board, I would ask that you just kind of think about what we're saying, mostly what I'm saying, not what you're. I won't put that evil on you, but there's a possibility that a lot of this shit is real. And the conclusion is that you should not trust anybody or anything. And I think that's a perfectly valid way of living.
I think that's a good way to end the show, man. What do you have to plug?
So I got some podcasts. If you go to the JDO show, the JDO show at podbean.com, it has my regular interview show where I talk to authors like you, for example. But it also has the first episodes of a new show that I'm doing called No Country, which is me and Chris Sacknessum talking about things like place and magic and spirituality and all this kind of stuff. It's very accessible. It's doing very well, better than any other podcast I've ever done. So yeah, check that out. My books are called By the Time We Leave Here, We'll Be Friends. That's a good one. I wrote that one like 10 years ago. It is a surreal gulag thriller. I don't know if it thrills, but it's definitely weird. And then Black Gum and Minor Storm are the other two. But yeah, thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This has been a great conversation. And yeah, definitely go pick up Black Gum. That's a great book. Hey, if you liked today's episode of Ghoulish, please go rate and review us on iTunes and all the other places you can do such a thing. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/PMM Publishing. When I'm not podcasting, I'm writing books, and I'm also publishing books by other folks, such as Paul Michael Anderson, whose new novella, Standalone, is out right now. It's a science fiction slasher, and it's gonna blow your fucking minds. I also recently put out the Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson, and upcoming in October, it's Antioch by Jessica Lennell. Go get them at perpetualpublishing.com. And always, please, deal God, live spooky, die spooky.
spooky.